Well, thanks for joining us again. This week we are on chapter 6, Mourning, in the book Following the Call, Living the Sermon on the Mount Together. And this week we're focused on the second of the two Beatitudes, Matthew 5:4, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And really a lot one could say about this particular Beatitude. Mourning is sorrow, it's grief, and not generally associated with positivity. But I think that's where we need to look a little deeper and understand why Jesus said that people would be blessed who mourn, would be happy who mourn. Kind of a contradiction. The first entry in this chapter is from Nicholas Wolterstorff, who speaks of mourners as having found or having caught a glimpse of God's new day, but who ache with all their being because they realize that they see in daily life that this new day has not been realized in our world as it is. Mm-hmm. He calls them mourners aching visionaries, so people who know that there is a state of goodness and of wholeness, and they grieve that we have not yet got there.
Yeah, and to the first section, what immediately came to mind for me, I mean, I think it's like deeply personal, the way you can relate to that thought, because at least for me, it brought back memories and moments surrounding very difficult deaths, personal deaths in the family, and how, you know, often when someone is sick and suffering and facing that, there is a huge struggle that kind of mounts, you know, as they draw closer to their final hour. And that's kind of how I related it, as the ultimate victory, but then the deep loss and absolute grief that comes with that.
Yeah, and loss is, mourning is often associated with death, and loss is what the next entry is really about. Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel laureate in literature, he writes about experiencing for the first time death and having this rent made in his life, and how that was completely disorienting. But then over time, finding the beauty and the comfort in it, especially this paragraph here. "With the loosening of the attraction of the world, the beauty of nature took on for me a deeper meaning. Death had given me the correct perspective from which to perceive the world in the fullness of its beauty. And as I saw the picture of the universe against the background of death, I found it entrancing." I kind of related to that quite personally. It just reminded me of a period of my life when someone in my age cohort died of a drug overdose. And I just remember being at the funeral and just feeling completely, just a sense of desolation and emptiness. But then afterwards, I was sitting with my brother and we started listening to Brahms' Requiem, and the first piece in there is actually directly from this Beatitude in German, "Selig sind die da Leidtragen, denn sie sollen getröstet werden." Blessed are they who mourn. And it was just such a beautiful moment where you could sense there's something actually greater and more beautiful and beyond our daily striving and work, which sometimes consumes us. There's something far greater, a reality far more beautiful, and I think that's what this Beatitude gets at.
And to that, and I mean, there's death. Of course, that is like the first thing that I personally think of when I think of mourning. But there's also just daily encounters when you're walking by someone. I mean, even within our community, you don't know who's dealing with depression, who maybe just had a miscarriage, like all these hidden things that not everyone is going to know all the facts and details about, but there's people that are mourning. And to recognize that and appreciate each other is kind of what this section reminded me of.
Mm-hmm. So it's not only our personal mourning, it's also mourning with those who mourn.
Yes.
And that's a really important thing. And how do we mourn with those who mourn? There's this probably oft-repeated observation about the book of Job, right? Job had all these horrible things happen to him, and his 3 friends showed up. And the time when they were real friends was, I guess it was for a year, that they sat quietly with him and didn't say anything. And problems only arose when they started offering advice and counsel. They were really mourning with him in that year of silence, and I think that's a really important thing to remember as we encounter people who are going through the struggles of life, that to mourn with them, we need to be quiet with them and open ourselves to something beyond human advice and counsel.
Yeah, because there's really nothing you could say
Yeah.
in the face
Yeah.
of some of life's joys and sorrows.
Yeah, so the last piece is from Frederica Matthews Green. And this section is about mourning for the fact that we ourselves have not been perfected yet. And daily, we do things that are contrary to our design or our purpose as image bearers. We do things to sully that image in our relationships, and how in some ways we would be crushed if we were aware of how far we strayed from what we should be.
That's true. He says here, or she says here, that God allows us a measure of merciful ignorance, which I loved.
Yeah.
So true.
As Jesus says, I have yet many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now, right? So we couldn't really bear to know how far off we are. But that's a mercy.
And I did really appreciate this little segment of this section. It said, instead of hoping that God will love us for our good parts and pass over the rest, we know that he died for the bad parts and will not rest until they are made right. The depth of our sin proves the height of his love, a height we cannot comprehend.
Right. So once again, Jesus turns everything on its head. He seeks out the one lost sheep and has greater joy in one sinner who repents than in 99 who were justified. So,
and mourning is so close to joy because of that picture, that imagery of we don't know the heights of God's love, and it's usually like when we are in the depths and look up that we are open to that and can actually see that the scales can fall from our eyes. So I think it is really interesting that deep sorrow, deep loss, mourning, actually the dawn is that much better and more joyful.
Yeah, so we'd be very interested in any thoughts, any stories, because everyone experiences these hard moments, and I think it's really important that we don't try to protect ourselves from hard moments. And I think in society as we have it now, like people shy away from death, and they shy away from experiencing that together. And for us here in the community, we're blessed because we take care of people from birth to death. And so personally, I've sat at the bedsides of many dying people and experienced their last moments. And for me, it's just been every time just a wonderful experience of not wonderful, but sometimes terrible, terrifying, but ultimately you're brought face to face with the realities with real life. So that's that. I think it's not a good thing to sanitize life too much and protect young people from these realities.
And it's so amazing that Jesus says this in the Beatitudes. It should give us great comfort and hope, I think.
Cool. So interested in your thoughts, and we'll see you next week.